Welcome back. Rhetoric Warriors podcast. Once again, we're like the linguistic border collies. That's what I'm calling it. It's like grabbing all the frisbees, all the linguistic frisbees out of the air and then shaking them and bringing them back to their owners. I'm Dr. Dan, rhetorician. That's what I do. I take apart words and messages for their internal workings. Also, late night comedy writer, founder of Rhetoric Warriors, trying to teach humans how to talk to humans in this age of broken politics. Thanks, Trump. The podcast talks to comedians about their careers and their politics. I convert conservatives because the right concerns me. And I talk to persuasion pros and rhetoricians, more rhetoricians and probably more persuasion pros on this podcast than any other podcast. So this is another episode of Persuasion Pros. In fact, it's part 2 of the Emily Carpenter saga, the ongoing story of. We got into this last time with her being a multi-potentialate. She's got like between 5 and 300 different businesses going. Something like that. And we dug into one, which I found really interesting because I do a lot of work in this too on the I guess, is this Choice Happens?
Choice Happens is my podcast. I think we're probably talking about Savvy Nom Nom here.
Oh, there you go.
Yeah, the food portion, food, weight, and body image. Yeah.
Savvy Nom Nom, food, weight, and body image. I like it. Everybody, welcome once again, Emily Carpenter, back to the show.
Hi there.
And for whoever listened all the way through to the first episode, as you should, look what's behind Emily. She and her awesome production assistant coordinator, John Warner, grabbed some balloons.
Yeah, we went all in. We got 3 balloons, and as he said, we're on brand today. So we have balloons representing our brands. So the orange and the blue, that's Whiz Bang, and the heart is Savvy Nom Nom because there are hearts in the logo. Couldn't get quite the right color, but the heart is something I like to think about a lot in regards to Savvy Nom Nom, because it's about loving yourself enough to take care of yourself with giving yourself healthy food. So
gosh, this is going to be so much fun because I am so opposite of that. I drain all the emotion out of food and weight control, and I just approach it from like a hardcore persuasion problem. Like it's really on my side of the world. It's about creating a persuasion orb around you so that all the persuasion coming towards you is moving you toward the way you want to live versus away from where you want to live.
Right. Tell me more about that. How do you manage that?
Well, when you actually look at like super designed persuasion, there's a chapter in my book called Persuasion Ecologies, and everybody lives inside of message ecology. Right?
Yeah.
Like John Warner is in your message ecology. He talks to you all the time. He has emotions and he's himself. And you're used to taking messaging and emotions and things like that from him.
Right. Yes.
Now, does he help you stay on the way you want to eat, or does he pull you away from it?
He is one he keeps me on more than he doesn't.
How old is he, by the way?
To that. He's 11. He's 11 years old. Yeah.
So just so everybody knows, there's an 11-year-old boy involved in this conversation. That's who John Warner is.
John Warner, we're talking about you. Yeah, he didn't read my sign.
Okay, so he tends to pull you toward what you want, not away from it. How so? Describe that.
Well, he knows when I'm off track with food. So he's his whole life known that I have food issues, right? So it's not something I can hide. I don't try to hide it from him. My goal is to raise a normal eater. I was never a normal eater, so I don't know exactly what that looks like. So I try to do my best to teach him what I never really knew for myself. So what that looked like when he was really young is I didn't feed him flour and sugar. Like I didn't give him really any of that, especially sugar. I just didn't give him sugar. Because I wasn't giving it to myself, and I just couldn't, like, it to me, it just felt like something that wasn't healthy for anybody. So why would I give it to him? So I didn't. and he eats sugar now, and I eat sugar now, in different amounts, varying amounts.
The
However,
devil. Let's just call it the devil. Sugar. Let's just replace the word sugar and say I'm going to eat some demon white right now.
It pretty much is, right? It has the same effect on your brain as heroin. So
It's completely not made for human beings. Like we're supposed to have to climb. Like if you ever watched indigenous tribes, the way they have to get any type of fructose or any type of glucose is by climbing these 80-foot trees and fighting a bee's nest. And they pull down honeycombs and they get that like, once an eon.
Right. So they're not consuming it in nearly the amounts that we do in modern society at all. So he has learned when I'm off track with food. And so he'll say to me, Mom, do you think it's time for a food reset? You think it might be time for a food reset? And I'll say right now. So today happens to be a day that I started a food reset. And we can talk a little bit about that.
Well, the balloons are good then, right? You're celebrating your food reset.
Yeah, the balloons are great because I feel like it is a celebration. I was completely off track with food. I haven't been that off track in a while. So it feels really good to be back on track. And so when I have a food reset coming up, when I know that one's coming up, this one took me a while. I actually tried once to do a food reset a few weeks ago, and I did it for about a day or two. And then I just fell apart after that. And so then I was going to try to do it again right away. And I thought, I'm just going to give myself some time. I'm not going to pressure myself. I'm just going to do it when I'm ready. So I set a date to do it. And then what I do when I set a date for a food reset is I eat really bad.
The seesaw of eating, the seesaw of food life.
I ate really bad for about a week leading up. Like, not great up until then either, but the last week or so was really not a place.
Is that to make yourself feel so bad that you'll stay on the food reset?
I think that was it. I think I was just playing a mind game with myself where I thought if I feel sick enough, I won't want to do this, or I thought if there was certain foods, I thought, well, I won't be able to eat this for a while, so I'm going to eat this. And I don't care what I'm going to eat today. I'm going to eat this. And so I went and got everything I wanted to get a little bit at a time. Every day I had something that I might not have again for a while, or maybe never again. I don't know. It's this sick thinking that I have. And it reminded me about the issues that I have with food, because when you're, 18 years away from losing over 100 pounds, and I haven't gone back to my highest weight ever. I've never gone back there. So sometimes you can get into this sense of complacency where it feels like I'm okay or I'm safe and I can eat that food and I'm okay eating that. And it might be okay for a little while, but then after a while, I get back into the cycle where if there's any kind of emotional event in my life, then it can I become like this emotional eater, and then I eat and I eat and I eat. And not that sometimes, I mean, I can't say I'm not as bad as I was 18 years ago, right? Like I pull myself out of it quicker. I'm observant of it. So what I decided to do was be the observer this time and just watch myself. So I saw myself eating the cookie. I saw myself having the ice cream. I could see that, and I could just say, isn't that interesting? And I could look at it and say, look at, why am I, what is the thing that led me up to do this? And I could observe how it felt in my body, how I would, like, my stomach would start bothering me, or I would get immediately tired, and just make those observations that I was not able to do 18 years ago. I just kept shoveling the food in without a second thought.
It's really hard to observe yourself. It's very easy to observe others. I remember we spent Easter over at a buddy of mine's house because he had a little girl the same age as my little girl at the time. And I remember getting up in the morning and he was in the kitchen, like prepping stuff for breakfast, and just kind of watching him. And he was just eating constantly. Like, He's a guy that I used to run a podcast for paleo comedians. So for people who are trying to lose weight, there was comedy and there was paleo information.
Nice.
And he came on my podcast, and the first day he weighed 305. And we did this quite a while when I was in LA, and he got down to, I think, 245 or 250. And it was following paleo low carb. And so but watching him just mindlessly eat in a rapid fashion, like I was like, he is eating so fast.
Right.
Like it's literally watching somebody just take hits.
Yeah, it
Could
is.
have been shots of alcohol.
It's the same exact thing, Dan. It's the same exact thing. It has the same effect on our body, on our spirit, on our mind. It's the same exact thing. So one of the food plans I did was a no flour, no sugar. I did that for 8 years. I didn't have flour or sugar for 8 years, but part of that is alcohol is a sugar. So you don't drink alcohol. And in fact, I spoke to a gentleman a few days ago. He said that he lost over 100 pounds, forget the exact amount, around 100 pounds, because he quit alcohol. And when he quit drinking alcohol, then he wasn't having the cravings for food, because whatever he drank, he suddenly had this big belly where he wanted to eat everything and buy food and have everybody eat with them. And then he was gaining weight. So when he cut out alcohol over a period of several, like I think 3 or 4 years, he lost around 100 pounds. So
it's amazing and I talk about this in my one person show, that the moment that changed everything for me was realizing that I was ignorant about body, about food and body chemistry, completely ignorant. And yet I was in charge, and
right.
I'm like, that is a bad system. Nobody would ever set that system up. Like, think of the fact, like inside of your body, it's like 80 chemistry factories, every 80 little chemical factories, like every organ, everything in your body has to run its own chemistry, and they're all interconnected, and you're in charge of all of them, and you have no chemistry degree.
Right.
And then there's an addict right here telling you, no, eat all of that. And so you have to constantly fight all these forces.
Right.
But ignorance is the first thing, like not really knowing. And your brain is so good at shutting off your defenses. It will tell you just to don't think about it.
Oh yeah.
You kind of know sugar's bad.
Yeah.
But have you ever watched what's his name? Lustig, Robert Lustig's video. It's called Sugar's Poison, I think. It's got millions of hits on YouTube. No. Which is crazy because it's a chemistry lecture.
Yeah.
And he basically goes through what fructose does, how it goes through your system. And it's crazy. You're like, oh, I should never eat that.
Yeah. And then you go have a little something, right?
Damn, I mean, it tastes so interesting.
Yeah. And the thing is too, that people, I don't know how many people I've talked to, they say, well, I don't really eat sugar. I don't, and I look at their body and I can see that they have some extra pounds, and they say, but I don't really eat sugar. And then if you have a meal with them, you see what they're actually eating. It might be pasta or potato chips or all these things that when they go into your body, they immediately convert into sugar.
Yeah.
So you may not feel like you're eating a lot of sugar, but because they're not eating cake at every meal, doesn't mean they're not eating sugar, but they put 3 lumps of sugar in their coffee or their tea and milk and all those other things that are sugar, and they drink alcohol, and they have all these things that are essentially sugar, or they'll have sugar substitutes which have the same reaction in your body as sugar, because you have the same kind of response chemically when you put an artificial sweetener in your body. So you're still setting up that reaction of wanting more. So
yeah, it is, again, like going back to ignorance. Like, it's so fascinating. I remember when I started to learn about food, I had the thought, what is flour?
Yeah.
Like it's white powder.
It is.
What does that come from? I don't even know a white food like that in nature that's that white.
It's not. No, it's not.
And then I realized, it's bleached.
Yeah.
And hyper pulverized by these massive machines that literally break down the cell walls of that food. You talk about something that's easy to digest and goes right into, insulin production and all that kind of stuff. Your body doesn't even have to break down the cell wall.
Right. Pretty much anything that's ground down into a fine white powder or into any powder is not going to be good in your system. So flour, sugar, cocaine, right? Like these things are all.
Hey. Come on now.
They have similar effects on our bodies because they're not a natural way of taking the nutrients in. They're not how they were designed. And even, I mean, heroin is what, poppies, poppy seed, you give a poppy seed muffin, it has no effect on you, but you grind that down into a fine white powder and you have a very addictive substance, right? So there's a lot of, things to consider there. And you say knowledge, and I hear you, like, it's, some of it is knowledge, but it's not all knowledge. We can have the knowledge, like, I know exactly what I'm supposed to eat and what I should and shouldn't eat. And
Yeah, knowledge is not a control mechanism.
No, it's helpful. It's good to know that you know something.
Doesn't really make any difference. Yeah.
It doesn't make any difference in the application of it. I know all the things, right? I think I told the story last time about going to the nutritionist, and she sat me in front of a VHS tape, and
stop eating donuts.
One donut a day, and the portion sizes. I mean, I know that stuff. I already knew that stuff. I didn't need a tape or a person to tell me that. There's a lot of stuff that we intrinsically know. I think we ignore it, and maybe we don't know how to do it differently. So, or we don't have the tools to maintain that over time. So anybody can lose weight, but it's a matter of what are the things that help us to maintain that, or to get back to status quo, or to the healthiest person that we can be, which isn't the person that's having more than a donut a day. Right?
So again, like, my thing is figuring out the persuasion of it, right? And so when I listen to people talk about their approaches, my brain instantly categorizes everybody's approach so that I know the type of persuasion that they're using. And like the difference between rational control of yourself, which is knowledge-based, slow decisions, control, staying on the plan. That's all sounds good, right? And everybody would like that. That's really difficult for human beings to hold on to.
For any length of time.
On the other side, it sounds like, I don't know if a lot of people mix spiritualism into this stuff about, respecting yourself and, those kind of things. And then there's the emotional, right? The psychological and the emotional. Yeah. It sounds like that's your main thing. It's like to go in and clean that up, and then that will help you follow an eating plan.
Absolutely. So it's learning how to trust yourself, to learn, what are good decisions, and see, like, really tuning into your body. What is something that makes me feel anxious? What is, like, when I eat a food, does it make me feel anxious? Does it make me feel calm? Does it make me feel energized? Or do I want to take a nap right away? Do I get angry when I eat that food? There are some foods that actually make me feel a little bit angry after I've eaten
like
them.
What?
Yeah.
What foods make you angry? Hot dogs? Look at it. She's going off, man.
Yeah, I got to think about that.
Proud of the hot dogs.
Yeah, the hot dogs. Yeah, well, no, not quite hot dogs, but that actually maybe, like, anything processed like that, really, any kind of processed food has that, like, anxious, it's like borderline anxious, angry. And sometimes it's hard to know what that is. And when I have a feeling in my body, I was in my 30s before I realized that feelings are actually something that's felt in the body. I didn't know this. I thought that it was just another word. I didn't think about what that actually meant. And when I was in my 30s, somebody mentioned this to me, that there are things that you feel in your body. And I started to pay attention. So I noticed when I get angry, my face feels hot. Like, I feel all the way up to my eyeballs. Like, it's like my whole face gets hot. And when I'm anxious, I feel it in my belly. Like, I feel this tension in my belly and like a little bit of a butterfly feeling, like this anxiety. If I'm scared, I feel a sinking, in my body. So I started to tune into what feelings actually felt like. And I wrote an article.
What if you feel slightly melancholy?
If I feel slightly melancholy, let's see.
Nostalgic. What if you feel nostalgic?
Yeah, I feel that sort of in my heart. I do feel that, like, in my heart, and it's a heaviness. Yeah. So when I'm feeling sad or melancholy, I feel a heaviness. Like, my whole body just feels like it takes more effort to move it. Right. So it actually is a feeling in the body. And I wrote an article years ago on one of my blogs about, I call it terrific twos. And, little kids that have their temper tantrums, and we say they're in their terrible twos. And what I discovered was there was someone at the house one day, and my son was having one of those little temper tantrums, and she said, "Stop, what are you feeling?" And he stopped, and he told her what he was feeling. And she said, "Well, why are you feeling like that?" And he told her why he was feeling like that. And then he was fine. he was fine. So I started using that technique with him to the point where instead of having the temper tantrum at all, he would come to me and tell me how he was feeling about something. So I think when kids are little, they start to feel those feelings in their body. It's like an actual physical response, and they don't know what it is. So they express it in the only way that they know how to regulate to get themselves feeling okay again. They're trying to balance out that feeling and get rid of it because they don't like it. It's uncomfortable, and none of us really likes it, and we don't know what it is. So when I have that feeling, or when I have some kind of feeling I'm not comfortable with in my body, and I didn't know that that's what those were, I just stuffed it, and I would put food in, and then I would feel better for a little while until I didn't feel good again. And then I would stuff it with something else. And before I knew it, the whole bag or the whole box was gone, right? Or the whole bowl, everything was gone. And then I was looking for something else to stuff in there because I didn't like the feeling and I didn't know how to regulate it any other way. So learning how to express the feelings, first to identify them, to see that you're having a feeling, to understand that that's what's going on in your body and in your mind and in your heart. And then to be able to express that in some way and to balance it some other way that's healthy, that's not gonna add to the problem that you're already having, right? So
well, this is horrible news for dudes,
right?
that they have to get emotionally aware in order to not be driven internally to consume externally as a therapy for that feeling problems.
Yeah, and that I understand it can be more difficult for the dudes to express that, you know, to be able to express that because men are taught to repress feelings. But I'm telling you that I was taught the same thing, right? So
well, I'm not even sure all the time you're taught to repress. You're just not taught to examine or to experience. Like that for, you know, John Warner, that's amazing that piece of emotional technology was dropped into his life very early, and you used it over and over and over again.
Right. Yeah.
My kids, my ex is a therapist. So like my daughter had a t-shirt made once that says, "My mom's a therapist. How does that make you feel?"
Nice.
And, you know, I'm not always down with the way she does it, but she does have clear emotional technology that she uses. And so they're used to talking like that. And my son does it. He's 19 and he, you know, has terminology for emotions.
Right. I didn't have any, you know, I remember I was seeing a therapist, which I do from time to time. Like right now I currently have a therapist. Sometimes I don't, sometimes I do, but I think everybody should have a therapist. I think it's a healthy thing to do, to just have somebody that's removed from your life situation that you can just talk about stuff without harming relationships, you know? So I think it's a really healthy thing to do. So my therapist at that time, now I'm trying to remember the story I was telling you, Dan. Where did I start this?
Probably that hot dog working on your brain.
Yeah. He asked me what I was feeling and I had no response. I couldn't actually identify the feeling that I was having. And so we worked first with just looking at the basic emotions, like mad, sad, glad, happy, you know, mad, sad, and glad, basically. And then you look at those and see if it's one of those three. And then once you discover what one of those three is, and you can look at name, you know, like finding a closer name to what you're actually feeling. Like I'm feeling angry, or I'm feeling anxious, or, you know, most emotions go into those three. And then you can come out from that and kind of get closer to what you're feeling and expressing that. And I actually went online and I looked for a list of the names of emotions so I could start to see what they were called, because I had no words for them. Growing up, I was taught that if you're not happy, that's not acceptable. So if I was angry or if I was sad, it was like, oh, come on, Emily, you know, get over it. You shouldn't be angry. You shouldn't be sad. You know, you should be grateful. You should be grateful for this or grateful for that, or happy because you have this or happy because you have that. And so the minute I expressed anything other than happy, it was counteracted with, you shouldn't feel that way.
I like it. It's the parents' fault. Man,
my parents did the best thing that they could possibly do. You know, they did their best. I don't
accept that. I do not allow people to squirm out of their responsibility. I've had this conversation with my mom. You know, my mom and my dad both had high school educations, and she's like, well, we did the best we could. And I'm like, well, you needed to do better. You should have gotten some education. That is no excuse.
Yeah, right. Well, everybody does. I think everybody does their best with what they know.
Do they? Do they?
Yeah, even if it's that they don't know that they should do better. Some people don't know that. So,
well, I'm like, even just this discussion you're having, right? So you are raising the bar on what it means to have an emotional perspective on eating, right?
Yeah.
To be able to label your emotions, to be able to get some type of meta perspective on your emotions instead of just letting those emotions just drive you to, dissonance catharsis. Like I feel bad in some way. I need something to make me feel better. This 4 candy bars, they got 40% of it.
Right.
So yeah, I mean, you're raising the bar on this by, having you've thought about this for years and years. So there's some sophistication to what you've extracted from all of that.
For sure. Yeah. Yeah.
So go back in time and teach that to my mom is my point.
Right. Well, that's the thing. None of us can go back. We can only go from this point and do our best, which will screw our kids up in a different way. Right.
No, it won't. My kids are amazing because I was amazing.
Right.
Because I worked through a bunch of stuff.
Yeah.
Like my first concept for parenting was leave no damage. Like do not damage these humans.
Right.
And so I'm like, anything I started to say, oh, I'm doing some damage here, I would stop that and I would do a different behavior. So that was, at least I had that technology, to avoid what's clearly damaging.
Yeah, I've had moments where I was like, this is not something I want my kid to experience. So I changed in the moment, or I'll apologize if I said something that I realized was really selfish or it wasn't helping him in the moment. However, my parenting philosophy has been and is that we all do so kids will grow up to do one of two things, right? They'll either love what their parents did and want to emulate that, and they'll be just like mom and dad and they're great human beings, right? And they do the best thing, or they completely rebel. And that could be, let's go back to the first one. They could like what their parents do and emulate that, or they could at least not know any different and they emulate that. So that could be good or bad. So the parents could be, and I don't think anything is necessarily good or bad. It just is, but let's put those labels on it for this discussion. So if
that's very Buddhist of you. That's very Zen.
Yeah, right.
I'm not judging the evil of the world. It's just,
there are things that you could say, yes, or that's evil, but I think that everything is us, making interpretation of something. So if there's something that a parent does, let's say they've done something cruel, the kid grows up and they're also the same way. They've mimicked their parents as an adult, or they could rebel and decide, okay, here's an example.
Keep going. Sorry, I've got a computer shut off problem.
Oh no.
No, keep going.
Okay, so here's an example. So my son has recently started scolding me for my carelessness with tissues.
With tissues?
Tissues. I have boxes of Kleenex in every room, and I use them like if I'm having a meal or if I, need to. I use them for everything. I use tissues for everything, and then I'll put them near me, so that when I get up later, I'll put them in the garbage, or that's my intention, right? I have this issue with tissue. I have a tissue issue, if you will.
That's awesome. Who came up with that one? Because that's a good label. That's some good naming right there.
Just now, I did that. Yeah, trademarked. Yeah. So I have a tissue issue. So my son had started getting annoyed with us and calling me out on it. He said, "Mom, what is your deal with tissues? You need to take care of them and put them in the garbage." And he started pointing them out wherever I left them and telling, scolding me for it. So I said, well, I think the reason why I do this is because when I was a kid, my mother never had a tissue.
Never. What a horrible childhood. No,
Grandma never had a tissue. We didn't have tissue boxes anywhere. Like if you needed something, you'd have a napkin or toilet paper.
That just means she wasn't properly prepared to take care of you, right?
Exactly.
It's a small example of it, but.
Yeah. So I would have to hand things to her that would normally go into a tissue. That's all I'll say on that. I would have to hand things to her because I was a kid and what was I going to do? And so but was never enough for her to carry a tissue. So I decided I was going to always have tissues. So I carry the pocket packs in the winter. So I always have pocket packs in my purse and my car. I have tissues everywhere, right? I'm always prepared with the tissue. And so we were in the car with my mother the other day, and he said to my mom, Grandma, mom has a problem with tissues. They're everywhere. And she said, well, she said, I never had a tissue anywhere. I don't keep tissues anywhere because my mother had tissues all over the place.
That's so funny.
Yeah. She said they were her whole purse was filled with tissues. They were all over everywhere. So I promised myself I would never carry a tissue, and I never did. So I told my son, you're the generation that can break free and you can have a healthy relationship.
A healthy relationship, the right amount of tissues.
Yeah.
So
yeah.
there's the book title, The Right Amount of Tissues.
Right amount of tissues. So my parenting philosophy is you do the best that you can with what you know, and you make sure your kids know that you love them. And that's all that you can do. Because no matter what, whether you do it the right way or the wrong way or the good or bad or whatever, the kid is going to decide what is right or wrong for them and do that thing in their life. But as long as they know that you love them, because I think a lot of adults grow up wishing their parents just would love them, So I want my son to know that I love him. And I'll say, did I tell you I loved you today? And he was like, yeah, Mom, about 100 times.
Got it, Mom.
I got it. All right.
You love me too much. I'm not going to love my kids because you loved me too much.
I know, right? It might end up backfiring, right? But that's what I know, and that's the best that I know today, and that's what I do.
Yeah. Well, we could talk about parenting forever too. Like one of my books is Persuasion for Parents. And it is because there's so much psychology of dealing with kids. Like nobody tells you you have to be Freud, to be a parent. And I'm like, oh my God, dealing with my daughter is very complex. She's a complex person. And we had so many discussions where I'm like, you are way too complex for me. This is pushing my skills way past, especially on emotions. Like she's a tragician. So she likes tragedy and drama and melodrama. And I'm not. Like I have a hard time with that stuff. And I recognize that I have a hard time with it. And I told her I've got literally 7 minutes of empathy in my tank. And once you get past that, I have to withdraw emotionally and cognitively because you're killing me. Like your teenage girl emotions, I think, are toxic and I can't take them. They're too much.
Yeah.
But she understood. She goes, oh yeah, I am a lot to deal with. And so we found a middle ground where we could walk and be okay. She'll probably tell you, a different story about, he barely listened. I'm like, I listened for 7 minutes.
Well, even being able to have that conversation and saying, because I will hit my wall on certain things and say, this is all I can deal with. I have about this much left, and then I have to go do something else. Like I can't stay in this spot right now. I have to go to do something else. And so I have to be able to set a boundary when I've reached it or before I've reached it, so that I'm not scaring anybody when I go beyond that.
Sure. Well, and this is the issue of having a rhetorician father, who intellectualizes their existence and creates a world like I was talking about earlier with the rhetorical ecology, means that wherever you can make changes within the ecology, you do, and you make those changes work for you.
Right.
Instead of against you. And it's a really useful way of looking at it because you start to realize there's so many things that you can dial. And it just, once you get enough of those dials turned in your favor, things get a lot easier.
Yeah.
You don't have to fight all these things coming at you because really human behavior is always an amalgamation of influences. So you've got this healthy emotionality, I would guess, that you've stored up from when you have had success, where you feel healthy. You've recovered, you've escaped the fat trap, as I call it, and there's a good feeling about that where you're like, oh, okay, I feel better. My body feels better. I feel better. I don't feel like a loser and a failure and shame and all those things.
Yeah.
And you can store that up like a battery. And if you get enough of that, you constantly curate that and nurture it, then it's always there for you.
Right.
It's just when the other dark battery starts up and you start to lose that, and then you feel worse and worse and worse. So in some ways like the idea of thinking that there are batteries in your ecology and fill up the good emotion one and
Yeah,
constantly be careful of that negative emotion one is a
absolutely.
useful way of looking at it too. But that can be designed.
Right.
You can consciously affect that stuff.
It really can be designed. And so one of the things I talk about in Savvy Nom Nom is inspirational input. And so finding things that lift you up, it has to do with the people that you surround yourself with, like who is your support network, and who are those 5 people, as Jim Rohn says, that you surround yourself with that on a regular basis, those are the people you become a sum of those people, or the average of those people. So if there's people that are draining you and there's people that are giving to you in your energy, that you want to have more that are giving to you than draining, and spend time with those people, because that's what's going to really feed your battery, so to speak. And getting that, doing those things that are inspiring to you. So reading books that inspire you, listening to podcasts that inspire you, watching shows that inspire you, going on, walks or having meditation, all those things that are going to build up that battery, that store of energy. And one thing that I do is I don't watch the news. I keep myself from.
That's a drainer. That's a battery drainer. That's a dark battery for sure.
I will skim the headlines from time to time, but even that, I start to feel tension in my body, and it's not really worth it to me to spend any amount of time on that, because anything that is really relevant to me, I hear about anyway. People will tell me.
Yes, because they're draining their anxiety, because they've absorbed too much. Like the media is a problem. It's a conflict-oriented storytelling source.
It is. Yes.
Ergo, and it's not its fault. That's what human beings are most interested in, is dangerous conflict.
Yeah, right.
Because that's, survival-wise, that's the first thing you have to know what's in your environment. It's like, what might kill me today?
Yeah.
Oh,
right.
Texas is trying to kill me and not kill. Yeah. And you're like, there are people around the world. My daughter's in France right now. And she's like, people are asking, because some of them know she's from Texas, and they're asking her about Texas.
Yeah.
French people are worried about us in Texas.
Wow.
And I'm
that's
like,
something, isn't it? Yeah. They're worried about, all the way
that is not, it's not an issue for you. Don't worry about it. You're going to be okay.
Well, that's it. We take on issues that don't belong to us when you watch the news and when you gossip and when you take in that negative influence from other people. You take it on as your own, and your brain starts to not notice the difference, that the danger that's happening out there is not really an immediate danger to you, but you still feel that in your body.
Yeah, it's a fake danger. Totally. Yeah.
To it. Yeah.
So are you, when you think about yourself and your motivational structures and feeding your motivational structures correctly, are you do you respond better to positive motivation or negative avoidance motivation?
This is something I've given some thought to lately. I want to say I respond to positive things, but I also am a person that can respond to the negative things. So when I lost the big amount of weight, there was some serious issues going on with me. Like I was having double vision. I tore the ACL in half in my knee. So
you were suffering.
I was suffering, like tremendously suffering. And I realized
very useful in persuasion. Suffering is very useful in persuasion. Like nobody drinks gasoline,
right?
because the suffering is immediate.
Right. Yeah.
But everybody drinks alcohol, which is essentially the same thing.
Pretty much, pretty close. Yeah.
But the suffering is delayed.
Right. And with food, there's not suffering when you eat. There's the opposite. Like there's enjoyment and
elation.
There's pleasure and elation and this amazing, like, oh, this is so good. I mean, alcohol, you have to have it a few times before you can start to enjoy it. I think like the initial time anyone drinks alcohol, I think it's, why does anybody drink this? Right. So that's not even immediate. But food, when you first eat something delicious, it's this amazing experience. But then, you just want to have more of that great experience, but you're not realizing the effect it's having on your body. And to the point where people take medications and they have surgeries because they don't want to change what they're putting into their body, or they don't know how to, or no one's teaching them, or even mentioning to them when they go to the doctor's office, you can change the way you're eating, and this problem can probably go away without a medication or without surgery.
It's so, again, looking around the persuasion ecology, one of the places to look in your ecology is the source of control. Where's this decision maker in your ecology?
Yeah.
And one of the problems with food is that you are both the pleasure, experiencer and the decision maker.
Right.
Like if I was your decision maker, you'd never have a weight problem ever again.
Right. Yeah.
Right.
We can always tell someone else what to do.
Yeah.
Yeah.
If John Warner, even if John Warner was running your food, your decisions,
he'd do a better job than me. Yeah.
You'd probably be fine.
Yeah.
So it's a bad system in any persuasion environment to have any kind of addict or compromised person making the decisions. I learned this when I worked for a business once that was actually it was a health retreat. And what they would do is they would do 30-day paleo resets for people. They would move there, live there for 30 days. They would cook for them, teach them how to cook, get them off sugar and all that kind of stuff.
Yeah.
And the guy who ran it was a secret addict. Like he was smoking, he was drinking every night, he was overweight, he was not following the paleo stuff. He even snuck some sugar into some of the recipes when he cooked because they made it taste better. I found out this later.
Wow.
And so I finally, I found out this was going on. I confronted him. I'm like, dude, you cannot be in charge or involved with a health facility.
No.
Because you are not in control of yourself at all. And he just lost his mind. And I'm like, and everybody started to adjust to him. I'm like, no. You don't adjust to the problem person in the ecology.
Right. Yeah.
That person has to adjust or get out of the ecology.
Yeah. Right.
And so like with food, I mean, you have a existential difficulty with persuasion, especially is that persuading yourself once the pleasure is a bad system. Pleasure is much more persuasive than health. Yeah,
it can be, because health we can blame on so many things. We can say it's our genetics, or it's, we can blame it on our parents if we want, or we can, whether it's genetics or just emotional blaming.
But that poppy seed muffin tastes good to you no matter what your mom did.
Yeah, exactly.
Pleasure is very clear in its reward.
Yes. So there's always a way to justify, rationalize, and minimize the effects of food on our body, and to just eat what we want anyway. And the thing is, when we do that, this past week, I had to prove it to myself again, one more time, that it's not, those aren't the right things for me, right? Those are not the right things for me. And so I feel so much better when I'm not eating the garbage, when I know that I'm eating breakfast, lunch, and dinner, and I don't have to think about food the rest of the day. It's just, I have my meals and I'm done. Anything beyond that is not necessary. I'm not going to starve between dinner and breakfast. Nobody ever starved between dinner and breakfast. So I know that I'm safe. I'm going to be okay. And food tastes better when you're not eating garbage. Everything tastes better. So people will say, I don't like vegetables, or I can't eat fruit. When you stop eating the other things, everything tastes better. So that guy didn't need to add sugar to anything. He added sugar because he was eating sugar himself. Because if he hadn't been eating sugar, then he would have seen that everything tasted better, right? If you're not putting that substance into your body, you don't miss it. After a while, you don't miss it at all. And in fact, your body starts to realize that that's not such a good thing to put in there, and it doesn't want to have it because it knows the effect, because you can feel the difference.
Yes. All of that sounds good and rational. The problem is pleasure is a genius, right?
Yeah.
And again, with kind of hyper palatable science food.
Yeah.
This is no human being has ever eaten this kind of food ever before on the planet.
Yeah.
It's all new, novel food. And it has a pleasure plateau that's so far up. Even if it's faked, it doesn't matter. Yeah. It's faked really well.
I spoke to someone on the Lunch Club last week, and Lunch Club is a app where you can make connections with people one-on-one on video calls, and you don't know who you're going to be speaking to. And I had the most amazing conversation with this guy in Beirut, Lebanon. And he was talking about the food there and how everything is fresh. They don't really have the processed food. And there is this, there are stores where they have the processed food and they call them American shops.
Nice.
Yeah, because it's American food. It's like the stuff. And when he was living here in San Francisco, when he first came to San Francisco, he gained 20 pounds the year he was here because he just wanted to eat all that great food. He said he went to McDonald's, and when he first got here, because it was the only thing that was open at 2:00 in the morning when his plane arrived, and he asked for the small meal, and what they gave him was what he would consider a large meal back home. Like he couldn't get used to the portions. So we put so much more than we need into every meal, and the extra processing. This is not how people eat all over the world. Americans have the most unnatural diet of anywhere in the world. And there are other countries that they've taken on that culture, and people love to eat American food. And I think it's, the disease of the American diet has spread to other areas of the world. And that's really sad to me because it's not how we're meant to eat. And it's, it causes a lot of disease and a lot of issues, just beyond even, the emotional stuff. Like I had this little voice inside my head all the time when I was heavier, was you're fat, you're ugly, why can't you control yourself? I mean, those things that were just those constant messages in my head, nobody needed to tell me because I said it to myself, but I didn't know how to get out of it. I didn't know how to do differently. And I might have had some of the knowledge, but I didn't know how to apply it. I didn't have the positive messaging. I didn't have the inspirational input. I didn't have somebody to tell me what was okay to, like what would eating certain things would help me to not want to eat the other things. I didn't know any of that. And so I struggled for a really long time, just in my own head. Right. So I think the thing that I try to help people to learn is that, recognizing emotions, seeing how when they have a feeling, it causes them to eat. And when they eat, it causes them to have a feeling, because it goes both ways. Sometimes when you eat something, it can cause a feeling in your body. And sometimes when you have a feeling in your body, it can cause you to eat something. So making those connections and then finding other things to do besides put the food to your mouth. So that's where I do meditation, journaling. I keep a daily gratitude list. That's the first thing I do when I wake up in the morning, is have a gratitude list. I say my prayers every day. I have inspirational things that I read and podcasts that I listen to and books that I listen to. And I have to constantly, when you think about how much did it take you to, what did you have to do to gain all that weight, right? Well, every day I was putting all this food in my body, right? So what do you have to do to keep the weight off? Well, every day I have to put these good things into my brain and into my body, and every day. So it may sound like extreme or excessive, but it's not any more than what I was doing before, but it's actually making me healthy and happy instead of miserable. And I'm going to say the word fat because that's how I felt. And that's, when you look at my pictures, you can see that, Yeah.
Well, the word fat is just, it's weird that when people say you are fat, I'm like, you have transcended human and just become fat. Like,
right. You have fat.
Right. You have fat on you. And I look at it, and again, I did all the deep diving into the physiology, and I learned a lot about this stuff, even though I'm not really a science person. I found it really fascinating to listen to all these guys and people that really study it. And even just the fact that, fat itself is a form of inflammation of the body, that, the body doesn't like to carry this much weight, but fat is also a cell system, and it wants to survive. It wants to stay on your body.
Yeah.
Like, physiologically, we are horribly set up for the surplus environment that we have created.
Yeah.
Other species just get bigger, not fatter. They grow bigger. Like, think of a goldfish versus a carp,
right.
or koi, and think of but human beings we don't continue to grow.
No.
Rats don't get fat. They have brown fat, and that burns off excess fat. We don't flush excess fat. We just hold on to it because it's a starvation mentality that your body has for the last 100,000 years. You take a starvation oriented body and you put it into a saturated environment, and it's going to fail
Yeah.
every
Right.
time. There's
Yeah.
no way around it. Like you could take
Yeah.
hummingbirds and, triple feed them super honey every day and you get some fat hummingbirds.
Right. Yeah.
But that physiology is working against us. And now the culture for a long time was set up. Our societies were set up for us to not get fat because we were always moving and we were nomadic and hunter gatherers and took a lot of effort to get food. Now it takes no effort to get food. We have so many things aligned against us, as a species right now because of our drive to be comfortable and convenient and pleasure saturated.
Yeah.
That it's I sometimes think of it like, think of this little person staying in a valley and there's all these avalanches coming at them. And there's the biggest persuasion machine ever built telling them to eat.
Right.
And you're like, just don't eat, and even trying to reach over to some good avalanche like you're doing and saying, maybe that's strong enough to counteract all this other, but these don't stop. It never stops.
They don't
The
stop.
negative emotions don't stop and all that. Even though you're countering them, they're still coming at you.
That's true. Yeah, you still have that, but you can start to be the observer and see how other people are. Like, people might be giving you that negative input about something or like pushing the food on you, and you can decide to not listen to it, or you can decide to hear it differently, or you can hear it as a reminder instead of hearing it as like a bad thing. You hear it as a reminder. So when someone, tries, like, you call them food pushers, someone tries to push food on you and give you the food and they give you more, and you're like, oh, you should eat this, here's this little thing. Or my favorite is when someone says, well, someone went through all that effort to make that for me. I felt like I just had to eat it.
Guilt. You should guilt. You should guilty.
It was so nice of them to make it for me. I just had to eat it. And well, that's nice, but they don't have to live in your body. And that was their decision to make that. So you can accept it. And, you can either say, no, thank you. That's not for me today. I'm hungry. Or I'm not hungry. I'm already full. I've already had enough for today. Or I have plans to eat later, so I can't ruin my appetite. Normal eaters will understand that, and they'll say,
get out of my face before I,
You could say that too. Yeah.
You want to hear my pusher moment?
Yeah.
Most spectacular pusher moment. I was doing a morning show when I was doing stand-up. I was a guest on a morning show, and I was going around doing my weight loss show. So I would do it in comedy clubs for an hour and 15 minutes, just talking to people about exactly this stuff, but just with jokes.
Yeah.
And they had a chef on, or a pastry chef of some type, and he'd made these things, and the host was like, oh, these are amazing. He handed one to me and he's like, try, have one. And I'm like, no, I'm not going to eat that.
Right. Yeah.
I don't eat this kind of stuff. It looks great. I think everybody else should eat it if that's what you eat, but I don't eat that. And he's like, eat it. And I'm like, you are pushing me on live TV to eat something I don't eat. What do you think about that?
Yeah. Yeah. Right. Exactly. That's true. And yeah, my favorite story for me was a friend. I was in one of my things where I was trying to eat healthy. I was eating healthier and I was not going to eat anything. And I took him to the store so he could run in and get something. He came out and he had a candy bar for me. And I said, I don't want the candy bar. I don't want that. So he I dropped him off at home. He got out of the car and he left the candy bar in the car purposely for me. So I threw it out the car window at him, and it was dark and it got lost in the, till the next morning. And I was like, I told you I don't want it,
What is the psychology of people that want to disrupt that for you?
I don't understand it, except that maybe they're justifying their own, whatever they're trying to do for themselves and justify that. So if they can get you to do something, it's normalizing their own behavior. And I think so many of us have food issues that we may not even see, that it's easier to do that than to try to see that if this person's eating healthy, maybe I should be doing that too. They're eating healthy, I'm not. I want them to eat like me. And then it's much easier conversion to get someone to eat unhealthy again than to get somebody else to eat healthy. Right.
Yeah.
It's much easier conversion. So I think we always try to put things back in balance. It's like that, the analogy of the crabs trying to get out of the bucket, and, you know, they're trying to get out of the bucket, and then the one crab gets up to the top of the bucket and he's about to get out and be free, and the other ones pull because they want out too. So instead of trying to get out, they pull him back in and nobody gets out. Right. And that's what we do. That's what we do to people with food.
My best, like, one of the things I think it's kind of fun about, like, when I went away to college, I went back for 3 years and I taught after I got my master's degree at the University of Louisville. And I purposefully started teaching my parents. I told them I was going to home college them. And I talked my mom into going and taking courses at the University of Louisville. And she did. And the interesting thing about it is they sent me away to get changed, to get better, to learn more. And then I'm like, that means I get to come back and give that to you and lift you up some. And my son has done this. Like, I started paleo. I lost all this weight when he was probably 9 or 10. And I changed the way I ate at every meal. And I slowly brought them over to that. I would not feed them, you know, flour and sugar and all those processed foods. I would cook, and I learned to cook so that the food was good and they enjoyed it. And about 11, he started getting really interested in lifting weights, and he got P90X. He ordered it and started doing those workouts, and then started getting interested in food. So I helped him learn how to cook. And now he's 19 and he's like 11% body fat and muscled, perfect, you know, chiseled person. Right. And he's got very good food control. Like, he doesn't eat outside his theory of how he likes to eat. So now I get to watch him and be like, oh, I should be more like him, you know, because he wasn't saddled with all that stuff where I grew up in Kentucky and hardcore suburban, you know, open a box plus Kentucky farm, you know, mentality of eat huge meals because that's manly and stuff. Right. But so he's, in some ways, he's gotten escape velocity from that. Yeah. And now I get to learn from him and use him as a role model and be awesome. Going, oh man, I should eat more like Zeke.
Yeah, I think it's great. My son has taught me so much about so many things. And I remember, like, being a kid and you come home from school with something, teach your parents. I taught them about fire safety, and I got my parents to my mother to quit smoking cigarettes. My dad took 20 more years to convince, but my mother quit smoking when I asked her to, you know, the first National Smokeout Day. And I said, they're having the first National Smokeout Day. And I said, can you just stop smoking for one day? And she did. And then she never smoked again. So our kids can be amazing inspiration and teachers and examples for us. So yeah, we're not always teaching them a lot of lessons, a lot more. I probably learn a lot more from my son than I teach him. So we help each other out. That's great.
Well, that's not the ratio here. I teach my son way more than he teaches me, but that's because I'm pedantic. I just have to. It's so much fun now because he's getting ready to move. And he's 19. He's really moving into adulthood, but he was here with me for the year during the pandemic. So I taught him a lot about cooking, about kitchen management, and even like his car and the room and all this stuff. And then he uses Google, which is a better parent than I'll ever be because it has tons of wide-ranging, accurate information for things. But he, you know, he's so far ahead of where I was. It's insane. You know? And so I tell him, if you fail now, it's your fault because you've gotten this way down the road, you know? But it's fun teaching him things, and he's pretty good about absorbing it. And I try to be too aware of, like, man, I'm just teaching too much. This is ridiculous. So it is fun to watch that stuff work out better. Like some of your theories work out in your kids that aren't saddled with the original problems that you're still dealing with.
Right.
You may be a grown up, but you still have all that training and all that baggage, all that stuff.
Yeah. And you know, the tissues are one example, but really I could have been talking about food. You know, I really could have been talking about food because when I look back at the issues throughout the generations, they've been there and they've been passed on in different ways. And my son, I think, has a better chance of being, you know, of being a normal eater because he sees what is good and what is, you know, what feels good in his body and what doesn't. And I never had like a full setting. You know, I didn't know what that felt like. Full to me was the goal. It was like, I want to, you know, beyond full, like see how far I could push it beyond feeling full. It wasn't, like, let me see if I can get close to full, but not quite full, and stop. That wasn't something I knew how to do. Whereas my son, well, I can see him start to slow down when he's eating. And I say, how are you feeling? Are you feeling full? And he was like, yeah, I am. And then he just stops. I don't say stop eating. I say, how are you feeling? Are you going to have more of that? And he'll stop. If he'll say, I'm going to have 1 or 2 more bites and then I'll be done. But he feels that. He understands what that feels like, and he knows when to stop. So that's amazing.
Got all the little micro nodes, right? When you actually look at this, again, like I said, it's like avalanches. There's so many things that you end up having to be like, these are dangerous to me, like that, not knowing what full feels like.
Right.
Which is the real challenge with carbs, because carbs never make you feel full. Like, no, they just don't. You can eat, and then you're way up in calories, and you're like, I still don't quite feel full, until you add some fat into it, and then your body's like, oh, okay, thanks, you fed us. So now I'll stop you from, voraciously wanting everything within 3 feet of you. But yeah, very complex, super fun to talk about.
Yeah.
Thanks for jumping on again.
All right. Glad we could dive a little bit further into the topic here. It's like one that's close to my heart. And, there is hope for people that want to make a difference in their life. If they want to change the way they're eating and feeling better, there is a way to do that when they get the right supports and, just tools to do that. So it's not just the diet, it's all the things that you do around the diet. And then there's things that can help. Yeah.
So comedy brain always crashes things together. And this is when you write for TV, David Letterman loved crashing 2 stories together at the last minute as a joke structure.
Oh, great.
Like the first joke I sold to him was, Barack Obama was still smoking. They found out he was still sneaking away to smoke. Oh. And Iran had just cheated on their presidential election. The guy got like 99% of the vote. And so the joke I sold was Barack Obama was really upset about this, corruption in Iran in the latest election. He's vowed to no longer smoke Camels. No. And so it crashes 2 stories together. Right, and this week there's a story that came out about some billionaires trying to build a new city in the desert somewhere, and it's going to cost at least $400 billion.
Oh, that headline, yeah.
They should do that with health. Like, it should just be healthy city.
Right?
Nothing unhealthy allowed in the city.
Wouldn't that be nice?
I would move to healthy city, wouldn't you?
Yeah, I would like to live in healthy city. Yeah. At least build one in my house. I could have a healthy city in my house if I
Well, yeah, but you're always trying to shelter it from all the unhealthy, like what the host city, right? I used to think about this with going on vacation, and everybody ends up eating horribly. Like they have the free buffets or free breakfast. And no, I want to go somewhere and eat like great food and work out if I want, and have, just feel better at the end of the vacation instead of
there are vacations like that, the yoga retreat. So there's things you can do. But the thing is, when you leave there, you still have to go back out into the world, right? So, but
then they're going to hit you with yoga. I don't want to hear the yoga rhetoric. I just want like really healthy yoga part, and none of the spirituality.
So there's one out there for you.
I need a big ladle full of Eastern mysticism with my healthy food. All right. Well, cool. Thanks again. I will circle back around and we'll talk about something else at some point.
All right. Sounds good.
All right. You guys have a great day. Thanks again, John Warner. Good job with the balloons.
Yeah.
All right. See ya.